Welcome to the LikeFolio call for July 23rd, 24th. We're going to talk about Bitcoin. Enormous, enormous demand from you guys for Bitcoin updates. So um, I always love to hear that. And we're at or near all-time highs on Bitcoin. And so I wanted to go through some of the key metrics that I like to look at, some of the things that really um, helped educate me and inform me on Bitcoin. But first of all, I think it's worth noting that even with Bitcoin at, let's say, 118,000 as I'm recording this, um, the Bitcoin dominance level has dropped. So that's Bitcoin's market cap versus the entire cryptocurrency market cap. And that's in green. Bitcoin market cap is in orange here. And you can see just recently the Bitcoin in green has dipped down um, pretty significantly in the past few days and weeks or week because the crypto bills that went through Congress that President Trump signed really did open the doors for these altcoins to flourish and for it to it was beneficial to Bitcoin for sure, but it's also very beneficial to the altcoins, which had been beaten down quite a bit compared to Bitcoin. And so we see um, a drop in Bitcoin dominance. I think this is a very bullish sign for Bitcoin because historically, Bitcoin dominance grows over time because it is by far um, very different than the rest of the cryptocurrency world. There's Bitcoin and then there's cryptocurrencies. And generally speaking, all roads lead to Bitcoin. So the money moving into the cryptocurrency market, um, a lot of it's traders, active traders, not necessarily people that have deep belief in the altcoins that they're buying. A lot of that money, 60%, 70%, eventually it tends to stay in the cryptocurrency world, off of the banking world, outside of the brokerage world, and in the cryptocurrency world. And it tends to gravitate towards Bitcoin because Bitcoin is by far the superior asset in the class. Um, and Bitcoin power law theory, if you haven't looked this up, um, this chart shows the green line is what is expected price of Bitcoin if it were to follow the power law theory. The power law theory is that Bitcoin price does not grow linearly in a straight line. Obviously, there's volatility, but doesn't grow in a linear fashion. It grows in an exponential fashion, much like a city, much like a social media network, where the more participants there are, the more money there is, the more valuable it becomes exponentially. So cities don't grow one person at a time. Cities grow multiple, in multiples in exponential fashion because the more people that are in a city, the more activity it is there, the more people are attracted to that city. Same with a network, same with a social network. Once you get past the tipping point and you have 1,000 users on a social media network, it's much easier to get the next 10,000 than it was the first 1,000. And then once you get to 10,000, it's much easier to get, or it's about the same to get to 100,000 as it was from 1,000 to 10,000. And that's what's going on with Bitcoin power law theory. You can see the price on the left. It goes from 0, 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, not 1, 2, 3, 4. And that is, really showcasing that for something with a network effect like Bitcoin has that follows power law theory, and it really seems to be following it very precisely. It is just as probable that Bitcoin will move from 100,000 to 1 million as it was that Bitcoin would move from 10,000 to 100,000, or that it was Bitcoin would move from 100 to 1,000. So that's power law theory. That's why we think exponential gains in Bitcoin are very, very likely. This chart is not as dramatic as it could be if we changed the axis, but it's pretty fair. And this shows the number of satoshis, which are the smallest unit that Bitcoin is divisible by, the number of satoshis it takes to buy a dollar. And I like to think of it this way because, if you're not invested in Bitcoin, if you're not invested in real estate, if you're not, you are investing in the dollar. And the dollar consistently falls in value because they print more and more of it to handle the debt, to allow for lower than market rate interest rates, etc. The dollar is being diluted all the time. And so it used to be in 2020, 10,000 satoshis were needed to buy a dollar, and now we're down under 1,000 satoshis needed to buy a dollar. And so when you see a chart like this, my mind is this probably going to near zero, and I think that that's true. I think that Bitcoin versus the dollar will continue to rise in value, and the dollar versus Bitcoin will continue to fall in value. And I've set out to kind of prove it a little bit. Every once in a while, I go to Steak and Shake, which now accepts Bitcoin for your purchases. I get the same burger or fries and shake combo. So burger and fries and a Coke. And both times these were taken 8 days apart. The one on the left is my receipt from July 7th. The one on the right is my receipt from July 15th. So 8 days later. Both were $13.28 in total, but I paid in Bitcoin. And the one on the left, I paid 12,303 satoshis. The one on the right, I paid 11,328 satoshis. So 8 days later, my steak and shake burger was 8% cheaper. And one of the things I really want you guys to start thinking about, and this is a huge hurdle for people because they say things like, well, Bitcoin's denominated in the dollar. It's denominated in the dollar. So the dollar is clearly going to always be the dominant form of currency. But that's a very short-sighted view. I can buy my burgers in Bitcoin. I could buy a house in Bitcoin. I could buy art in Bitcoin. And when you start thinking of things in terms of Bitcoin, the reality of the marketplace becomes much more clear. And I have a challenge for you that I really want you to think about. And that is, if the world is getting more efficient, technology is providing us unbelievable efficiencies, unbelievable innovations. Less people are required to do the same amount of work. Less resources are required to produce the same output. If all of that is true, then why are things getting more expensive? Why aren't they getting cheaper? Why is a house that I live in, that I bought in 2021, now worth 40% more in dollar terms 4 years later than it was when I bought it? Why is that house worth 40% more? The population of where I live really hasn't changed. The demand for housing where I live really hasn't changed. The house on its own, other than what we may have spent to maintain it, has not improved. It's actually declined. It's gotten older. The roof has gotten older. Everything in it has gotten older and more fragile. It's just the nature of the physical objects. And so, why is that house worth 40% more? The truth is, it's not. It is worth less. And it's the dollars that are buying it that are worth 40% less because they printed enormous sums during COVID, and they're going to continue printing into the future. So it's the dollars that are losing value. It's not the house that's gaining value. And the way I look at it, the other way to look at it is if I just flip my mindset and I say, okay, is my house really worth more? Well, let's compare it. Let's compare it to Bitcoin. You can also compare it to gold. Um, in both of those instances, the house is absolutely worth less than it was. The house may have been 30 Bitcoins to purchase in 2021, and now it would be about 12 Bitcoins to purchase that same house. And in gold terms, the difference is less stark because gold is already established, whereas Bitcoin is being established. But that is something I want you to think about just as you're working your way through um, life and through pricing and etc. Why is the same object more expensive when everything is getting easier to make? We have all these innovations, we have AI, we have everything. Why is it more expensive? And the only conclusion you can come to is because they are diluting the value of my dollars every single day. And eventually you get to the point where you start to see that the S&P 500 is really pretty much an inflation gauge. These companies are not outperforming. They are, for the most part, the average S&P 500 company is going up in value by about the same amount that the money supply expands. And so I want you to think about that. I want you to think about that with regards to Bitcoin and what it would mean to live on a Bitcoin standard in the future. It's not today, but it's coming. It feels like it's coming. I'm buying my burgers with Bitcoin, and they're getting cheaper very quickly. And so I think that's very interesting. So sum it up. Bitcoin dominance has finally dropped. Crypto bills have brought a lot of money into the cryptocurrency space, and a lot of that money went to altcoins, which could benefit greatly from the bill that was passed. But ultimately, all roads lead to Bitcoin. All of that money eventually, we believe, flows into Bitcoin. We're at the exact price predicted by long-term power law theory, which is the exponential rate of growth when you have an effective network, which Bitcoin certainly is. The network has grown faster and more powerful than the internet did over its first 15 years. The number of Satoshis, the number of Bitcoins it takes to buy a dollar keeps falling. My Steak and Shake burgers are getting cheaper if you're using Bitcoin. In fact, the price of those burgers I expect 2 years from now to be more expensive in dollar terms and far less expensive in Bitcoin terms. And so the final thought experiment I just want to leave you with one more time is that in a free market with efficiencies, innovations, less resources, and less labor needed to produce the same output, why isn't everything getting cheaper? And once you answer that, I think you'll really flip the switch and understand why a permanently scarce, mathematically secure form of money like Bitcoin or like gold, if you like gold. But Bitcoin's just the better, in my opinion, just the better version of gold, the superior version of gold. But that scarcity is necessary. And if you had that scarcity in the money supply, everything would be getting cheaper and your money would be going further. And the last question I'll leave you with, if the US dollar is so good, that's what everything's denominated in, if it's so good, then why is it a bad idea to invest my money in money? Terrible idea to invest my money in money right now. Well, you got to find hard money, or you got to find great assets that produce more money. And that's what we're doing at LikeFolio. So Bitcoin is certainly top of that list. There's a lot of companies that are very high on that list that we'll get into. If you have questions, hit me up, Andy at LikeFolio.com. I love hearing from you guys. I love hearing about companies you're looking at, something that's bubbling up, something that you see your nieces and nephews or coworkers talking about that they weren't talking about a couple weeks ago, a couple years ago. Love hearing that stuff. That gives us clues into what we should look for. So hit me up. Appreciate all of you. And we'll see you next week on LikeFolio. Thanks.